Welcome back. Tonight, we're diving into something different, something that moves at 320 kilometers per hour through the darkness of Japan, carrying passengers who sometimes never reach their destination. The Shinkansen, Japan's iconic bullet train, a marvel of modern engineering. Clean, efficient, always on time. Millions of people ride it every single day without incident, but when the sun sets and the last trains of the night begin their journeys, something changes. The fluorescent lights seem dimmer, the silence between stations stretches longer, and occasionally, very occasionally, passengers experience things that can't be explained. See, most people don't know this, but there's an unspoken rule among regular late-night Shinkansen travelers. A rule that's never posted on any sign, never announced over any speaker, but somehow everyone who rides these trains often enough learns it eventually. Never ride alone after dark, especially not in the last car. The thing about bullet trains is that they're designed for speed and efficiency. They move so fast that once you're inside, you're completely isolated from the outside world. No stops for hours. No way to get off until you reach your destination. You're locked in a metal tube hurtling through the darkness at incredible speeds. And if something happens, if you see something or someone that shouldn't be there, there's absolutely nowhere to go. Tonight, I'm going to share 4 stories with you. 4 incidents that happened on Japan's bullet train network over the past decade. These aren't legends passed down through generations, these are recent events. Documented cases. Stories from people who lived through them, who reported what they saw to authorities, who swore they would never ride the late-night trains alone again. The Japanese railway companies don't like to talk about these incidents. They're not good for business. Tourism, commuters, international reputation, all of it depends on people feeling safe on these trains. So when something unexplainable happens, they handle it quietly. They reassign staff. They take certain cars out of service for maintenance. They change route schedules without explanation, but the stories still get out. They spread through online forums, late-night convenience store conversations, and whispered warnings between co-workers. Because the people who experience these things, they need to tell someone. They need to warn others. So before you book that discounted late-night ticket, before you decide to save a few thousand yen by traveling after 11 p.m., before you find yourself alone in a nearly empty train car as it speeds through the darkened Japanese countryside, you might want to hear what happened to these 4 people. Because once you're on that train, once those doors close and the platform disappears behind you, you're committed. There's no getting off, no escape. Just you, the darkness outside, and whatever else might be sharing that car with you. The first story takes place in 2019 on the Tokaido Shinkansen line, the busiest high-speed rail line in Japan, running between Tokyo and Osaka. Thousands of people ride it every day. It's considered one of the safest forms of transportation in the world. But on one particular November night, a businessman named Takeshi learned that safety is relative, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing on a train isn't a person at all. Let's dive in. Takeshi was a salaryman in his late 30s, working for a mid-sized tech company in Tokyo. November 2019 was particularly brutal for him. Back-to-back business trips to Osaka, client meetings that ran late into the evening, and a boss who didn't believe in paying for hotel rooms when the last Shinkansen could get you back to Tokyo by midnight. So there he was, standing on the platform at Shinosaka Station at 10:47 p.m, waiting for the final Nozomi train back to Tokyo. It was a Tuesday night, and the platform was nearly empty. Most business travelers had already left on earlier trains. The few people waiting with him were scattered far apart, everyone exhausted, everyone just wanting to get home. When the train pulled in, Takeshi noticed something odd. Cars 1 through 15 had scattered passengers boarding, but car 16, the last car, was completely empty. Not a single person walked toward it. In fact, he watched as an elderly man started heading that direction, then suddenly stopped, looked at the car number, and quickly turned around to board car 15 instead. Takeshi thought it was strange, but he was tired. His feet hurt, and an empty car meant he could spread out, maybe even lie down across a row of seats and get some sleep during the 2.5-hour journey. So he walked to car 16 and stepped inside. The doors closed behind him with that familiar pneumatic hiss. The train lurched forward smoothly, and within seconds, they were accelerating out of Shinosaka Station, heading into the darkness. Takeshi found a window seat about halfway down the car, tossed his briefcase onto the seat beside him, and let out a long breath. Finally, Silence. Peace. No crowded trains, no pushing, no salarymen breathing down his neck. Just him and an entire train car to himself. The first 30 minutes of the journey were perfectly normal. Takeshi dozed off a few times, woke up to check his phone, dozed off again. The train hummed along smoothly, the countryside darkness rushing past the windows. Every so often, they'd pass through a station without stopping, the platform lights briefly illuminating the car before plunging it back into that dim fluorescent glow. Then, somewhere between Nagoya and Shizuoka, Takeshi woke up with a start. He wasn't sure why. No loud noise, no sudden movement, just an overwhelming feeling that something had changed. He sat up straight and looked around the car. That's when he saw her. At the far end of car 16, near the door that connected to car 15, a woman was sitting. She hadn't been there before. Takeshi was absolutely certain of that. He had walked the entire length of the car when he boarded. It had been completely empty. The woman was wearing a white dress. Not a modern dress, but something old-fashioned. Traditional. Her long black hair hung down past her shoulders, and she was sitting perfectly still, facing forward, hands folded in her lap. Takeshi's first thought was that she must have come from car 15 while he was sleeping. That made sense. People walk between cars all the time. But something about her stillness bothered him. She didn't move at all, didn't look at her phone, didn't adjust her position, just sat there, rigid and motionless. He tried to go back to sleep, but he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. After a few minutes, he casually glanced back in her direction. She had moved. She was now sitting 3 rows closer to him. Same position, same white dress, same perfect stillness, but definitely closer than before. Takeshi's heart started pounding. He hadn't heard her move, no footsteps, no sound of a seat cushion shifting, and more importantly, he had been looking in her direction just a moment ago. He hadn't seen her stand up or walk. He told himself he was being paranoid. Maybe he had dozed off for a second without realizing it. Maybe she had moved while his eyes were closed. That had to be it. But then, it happened again. He looked away for just a moment, glanced out the window at the darkness rushing past. When he looked back, she had moved again. Now, she was only 6 rows away from him, still facing forward, still perfectly motionless, but undeniably closer. Takeshi stood up abruptly. His briefcase fell to the floor with a loud thud. The woman didn't react, didn't turn her head, didn't acknowledge the sound at all. "Excuse me," Takeshi called out, his voice shaking slightly. "Are you all right?" No response. The woman just sat there, her long hair obscuring the side of her face. Takeshi's instincts were screaming at him now. Get out, move to another car, do it now. He grabbed his briefcase and started walking quickly toward the door to car 15. He'd have to pass by her to get there, but he didn't care. He just needed to get out of car 16. As he approached her row, walking as fast as he could without running, he made the mistake of looking directly at her face. She had no eyes, just smooth skin where her eyes should have been. And her mouth was open, frozen in a silent scream, revealing black, empty darkness inside. Takeshi ran. He slammed through the door connecting car 16 to car 15, nearly falling as he stumbled into the next car. Several passengers looked up at him, startled by his dramatic entrance. He stood there, panting, his back pressed against the door, staring through the small window into car 16. The woman was gone. The car was completely empty again. A station attendant happened to be walking through car 15 at that moment. He noticed Takeshi's pale face and shaking hands. "Sir, are you all right? Are you feeling sick?" Takeshi tried to explain what he had seen, but the words came out jumbled and frantic. The attendant listened patiently, then his expression changed. He glanced at the door to car 16, then back at Takeshi. "You were sitting in car 16? The attendant asked quietly. Takeshi nodded. The attendant sighed, then motioned for Takeshi to sit down. Car 16 on this particular train has been problematic. We've had multiple reports over the past 6 months. Always the same description. A woman in white, always appearing when someone rides alone in that car after 10 p.m. He explained that the railway company had investigated. They reviewed security footage, but cameras showed nothing. They sent staff members to ride in car 16 on late-night runs, but nothing ever happened when multiple people were present. Only solo passengers reported seeing her. We've requested to take this car out of service, the attendant continued, but management keeps denying it. They say there's no evidence of anything wrong, no mechanical issues, no explanation for the reports, so officially nothing is wrong with car 16. He paused, then added, but unofficially, those of us who work these late night routes, we tell each other never let a passenger ride alone in car 16. We're not supposed to say why, but we try to keep that car occupied or steer people away from it. Takeshi never rode in the last car of a Shinkansen again, and if you're ever on a late-night bullet train, if you find yourself walking toward an empty car while everyone else seems to avoid it, there's probably a reason. Trust your instincts. Choose a different car, because sometimes the emptiest seats come with the worst company. Our second story takes place in March 2021 on the Tohoku Shinkansen line running north from Tokyo towards Sendai. This incident involved a young nurse named Yuki who was returning home after a double shift at a hospital in Tokyo. It was 11:20 p.m. when she boarded the train, exhausted beyond measure. Yuki chose a seat in car 7, near the middle of the train. The car was maybe 20% full, scattered with other tired travelers. She settled into her window seat, grateful that no one was sitting directly next to her. Within minutes of departure, she had fallen into a deep sleep. She woke up disoriented, unsure how much time had passed. The train was still moving, but something felt different. The lighting seemed dimmer somehow, and the car was much quieter than before. She looked around and realized why. Every other passenger was asleep, not just dozing, but deeply unconscious. Heads tilted at uncomfortable angles, mouths hanging open, completely still. All except for one man. He was sitting 3 rows ahead of her, across the aisle. An older gentleman in a dark suit, probably in his 60s. He was sitting perfectly upright, staring straight ahead at the seat in front of him. Not looking at his phone. Not reading. Just staring. Yuki thought it was odd, but she was too tired to care. She closed her eyes again, trying to fall back asleep. But something kept nagging at her. A feeling. She opened her eyes again and looked at the man. He hadn't moved. Same position. Same rigid posture, same blank stare. It was like he was frozen. Then Yuki noticed something that made her blood run cold. The man wasn't breathing. His chest wasn't rising and falling. There was no movement at all. She watched him for a full minute, her heart pounding. Nothing. No breath. No subtle shift in position. Complete stillness. Yuki stood up slowly, her nursing instincts overriding her fear. Maybe he was having a medical emergency. Maybe he needed help. She walked toward him carefully, her footsteps loud in the silent car. As she got closer, she could see his face more clearly. His skin had a greyish tint to it. His eyes were open but glassy, unfocused. And there was something else. A smell. Faint but unmistakable to someone who worked in a hospital. The smell of death. "Sir?" Yuki said softly, reaching out to touch his shoulder. Sir? Are you?" The moment her fingers made contact, the man's head snapped toward her with impossible speed. His neck twisted at an angle that should have been physically impossible. His eyes locked onto hers, and his mouth opened wide, far wider than any human mouth should open. A sound came out. Not words, not a scream, something else. A low, rattling moan that seemed to vibrate through the entire train car. Yuki stumbled backward, nearly falling. The man's head slowly rotated back to its original position, facing forward again. As if nothing had happened, as if he was just a normal passenger waiting for his stop. Yuki ran to the front of the car and slammed her hand on the emergency call button. Within seconds, a conductor's voice crackled through the speaker. "Yes, what's the emergency?" "There's a man," Yuki said, her voice shaking. "In car 7. I think he's dead. I think he's been dead, but he moved. He..." "Car 7? The conductor interrupted. His tone changed immediately. "What row?" "Row 12. Seat D." There was a long pause. Then the conductor said, "Stay where you are. Don't go near that seat. We're sending someone." 2 conductors arrived within minutes, moving quickly through the car. They went straight to row 12, Seat D. Yuki watched from the front of the car as they examined the seat. She saw them check something, speak into their radios, then one of them pulled out what looked like a maintenance log. Finally, they came over to her. "Miss, are you all right? You look very pale." "That man," Yuki said. "Is he..." "There's no one sitting in row 12, Seat D," the conductor said carefully. "That seat has been empty since Tokyo." But I saw him. I touched him. The conductor exchanged a glance with his colleague. Miss, seat 12D has been blocked from our reservation system for the past 8 months. We don't sell tickets for that seat anymore. A passenger died there. Heart attack. Last year. By the time we reached the next station, he had been deceased for over an hour. Just sitting there. The other passengers didn't even notice until we checked tickets. He paused, then continued quietly. Since then, several passengers have reported seeing a man in that seat on late-night runs. Always the same description. Dark suit, sitting upright, staring straight ahead. We've had the seat inspected, blessed by priests, everything. But the reports keep coming. Yuki spent the rest of the journey in the conductor's booth. She never rode the Tohoku Shinkansen after dark again. And according to railway staff, Seat 12D in Car 7 remains mysteriously absent from the reservation system. Officially, it's due to recurring mechanical issues with that particular seat. But the conductors know better. Some passengers, it seems, never reach their final destination. They just keep riding, night after night, waiting for a stop that never comes. In October 2022, a college student named Kenji experienced something on the Sanyo Shinkansen that he still can't fully explain. He was traveling from Hiroshima back to his university in Fukuoka, a journey he made every few weeks to visit his family. It was a Sunday night, and he had caught the 10:35 p.m. train, hoping to make it back to his dorm before midnight. The train was relatively empty. Kenji found a seat in car 9, put in his earbuds, and started scrolling through his phone. The steady rhythm of the train was calming, and he found himself getting drowsy despite the loud music in his ears. About 40 minutes into the journey, somewhere between Hiroshima and Tokuyama, Kenji noticed something strange. His music had stopped. Not paused, just stopped. He looked at his phone, confused. The music app was still open, still showing the song playing, but no sound was coming through his earbuds. He took them out, thinking maybe they had died. But the moment he removed them, he heard it. An announcement playing over the train's PA system. But it wasn't a normal announcement. The voice was female, polite and professional, exactly like every other train announcement. But what she was saying made no sense. Ladies and gentlemen, we will shortly be arriving at Kannon Station. Passengers departing at Kannon, please prepare your belongings. The doors on the left side will open. Kannon Station, final stop. All passengers must exit. Kenji frowned. There was no station called Kannon on the Sanyo Shinkansen line. He had ridden this route dozens of times. He knew every stop, and more importantly, Fukuoka was supposed to be the final stop, not some place he'd never heard of. He looked around the car to see if anyone else was reacting to the announcement. But the few other passengers seemed completely oblivious. One man was asleep. A woman was reading a book. Another passenger was staring out the window. No one seemed to have heard it. Maybe I misheard, Kenji thought. He put his earbuds back in and tried to restart his music. It still wouldn't play. Then the announcement came again. Same voice, same message, word for word. Ladies and gentlemen, we will shortly be arriving at Kannon Station. Passengers departing at Kannon, please prepare your belongings. The doors on the left side will open. Kannon Station. Final stop. All passengers must exit. Kenji's hands started to sweat. He took out his earbuds again and stood up, walking toward the front of the car. Maybe there was a conductor nearby who could explain what was happening. As he walked through the automatic door into the vestibule area between cars, the announcement played again. But this time, it was different. This time, there was something else underneath the polite voice. A second sound. Distant screaming. Kenji froze in the vestibule, his heart pounding. The screaming was faint, but it was definitely there. Multiple voices, overlapping, crying out in agony or terror, and they were getting louder. He looked out the small window in the door, out at the darkness rushing past, and that's when he saw them. Faces. Dozens of them. Pressed against the outside of the train, their mouths open in silent screams, their hands clawing at the glass. They were there for just a fraction of a second as the train sped past, but Kenji saw them clearly. Men, women, children. All wearing old-fashioned clothing, all screaming. The announcement played again. Now arriving at Kannon Station. Please exit through the left side doors. Kannon Station. All passengers must exit. This is the final stop. And then, impossibly, Kenji felt the train beginning to slow down. He burst through the door into car 8, running toward the front of the train. He needed to find a conductor. He needed to understand what was happening. As he ran, he passed a digital display showing the train's route. According to the display, they were approaching Fukuoka. Next stop, 15 minutes away. But the train was definitely slowing down. He could feel it. Kenji found a conductor in car 6 and frantically explained what he had heard, what he had seen. The conductor listened, his expression growing more concerned with each word. "The announcement," the conductor said slowly. "You said it mentioned Cannon Station." "Yes, and the train is slowing down. We're stopping there." The conductor pulled out his radio and spoke into it rapidly. Kenji couldn't hear the response, but he saw the conductor's face go pale. "Cannon," the conductor said quietly, "was a proposed station that was never built. During construction in the 1970 seconds, there was an accident, a tunnel collapse. 43 workers were killed. The project was abandoned." He paused, checking something on his tablet. "The train isn't slowing down. We're maintaining normal speed. But what? You're the third person to report hearing that announcement this month. Always on late-night Sunday trains. Always in this specific section of track, right where the old construction site was." The conductor escorted Kenji back to his seat and stayed nearby for the rest of the journey. The announcement never played again. At least, not where anyone else could hear it. The train arrived in Fukuoka on schedule. No stops at non-existent stations. No mysterious delays. But Kenji never rode the late Sunday train again. And sometimes, late at night, he still wonders what would have happened if he had stayed in that vestibule. If he had waited to see if the doors would actually open. And what might have been waiting on the platform of a station that was never built. Our final story is perhaps the most disturbing because it involves something that could happen to anyone. It doesn't require being alone. It doesn't involve a specific seat or car. It can happen anywhere to anyone as long as you make one simple mistake, as long as you break the reflection rule. In January 2023, a businessman named Hiroshi was traveling from Tokyo to Kyoto on a Thursday evening. The 9 p.m. Nozomi was packed with business travelers and tourists. Hiroshi was sitting in car 5, stuck in a middle seat between a sleeping salaryman and a foreign tourist with large headphones. About an hour into the journey, as they sped through the darkness, Hiroshi's phone died. He'd forgotten to charge it before leaving the office, and now he was stuck with nothing to do but stare out the window at his own reflection in the glass. The Shinkansen windows at night act like perfect mirrors when the interior lights are on and it's dark outside. You can see yourself clearly, overlaid on the rushing darkness beyond. Most passengers don't think twice about it. Hiroshi certainly didn't. He stared at his reflection, tired and bored, watching his own face stare back at him. And that's when he noticed something odd. His reflection wasn't quite synchronized with his movements. It was subtle at first. He'd blink, and his reflection would blink a fraction of a second later. He'd turn his head, and the reflection would follow just slightly delayed, like a video call with bad lag. Hiroshi convinced himself it was just fatigue playing tricks on his eyes. But then his reflection smiled. And Hiroshi wasn't smiling. He jerked his head away from the window, his heart suddenly racing. The salaryman next to him stirred but didn't wake. The tourist kept bobbing his head to music. No one else seemed to notice anything wrong. Slowly, Hiroshi looked back at the window. His reflection was staring at him, still smiling. That same smile, frozen on its face, even as Hiroshi's own expression showed clear fear. Then the reflection raised its hand and pressed it against the inside of the glass, from Hiroshi's side, as if it was reaching through from the darkness outside. Hiroshi scrambled out of his seat, climbing over the sleeping salaryman, nearly falling into the aisle. Several passengers looked up. Startled, he stood there, breathing heavily, staring at his empty seat and the window beyond it. In the reflection, he could see his empty seat, but he could also see himself still sitting there, still smiling, staring directly out from the glass. An elderly woman sitting across the aisle leaned toward him. "Young man, are you all right? Do you see that?" Hiroshi whispered, pointing at the window. "In the reflection. Do you see it?" The woman looked at the window, then back at Hiroshi with concern. "I see the reflection of your empty seat. Are you feeling sick?" Hiroshi looked again. The reflection of himself was still there, still sitting, still smiling. And now its hand was pressed against the glass from the inside, but the woman couldn't see it. Only he could. He spent the rest of the journey standing in the aisle, refusing to sit down, refusing to look at any window. When the train finally reached Kyoto, he practically ran off, not even bothering to collect his belongings from the overhead compartment. Later, he posted about his experience on a train enthusiast forum, expecting to be mocked. Instead, he received dozens of responses from other passengers who had experienced similar things. Different trains, different routes, but always the same pattern, staring at their reflection too long in the dark windows, noticing the delays, seeing the reflection move independently, and most disturbingly, many reported that after their experience, they started seeing their reflections face in other windows, in their car mirrors, in store windows, always watching, always smiling. One commenter, claiming to be a retired train conductor, posted a warning that sent chills down Hiroshi's spine. There's an old rule among train staff that we don't talk about publicly. On bullet trains after dark, never stare at your reflection in the window for more than a few seconds. And if you do, never, under any circumstances, make eye contact with it. Because once your reflection sees that you've noticed it's watching you, it knows where to find you, and reflections exist everywhere. Hiroshi installed blackout curtains in his apartment that very night. He stopped riding trains after dark. He avoids looking at his reflection whenever possible, because sometimes he still sees it. That smile, that hand pressed against the glass, not his reflection anymore. Something else wearing his face. The bullet trains continue to run every night, carrying thousands of passengers through the darkness. Clean, efficient, perfectly safe. Just remember, when you're riding alone after dark and you catch yourself staring at that window, at your own reflection looking back, pay attention. Make sure it's doing exactly what you're doing. Make sure that smile on its face is really yours. Because if it's not, don't look away. Whatever you do, don't break eye contact. Because the moment you do, the moment you show fear, that's when your reflection knows it's not just a reflection anymore. And then it's already too late.